Welcome to the Stranger Conversations podcast, where we explore the lives and lessons of those around us, hidden in plain sight. I'm your host, Tay Jones. Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Stranger Conversations podcast. On today's episode, I speak with Jackie Lapin, also known as the Historic Traveler. As you're about to hear, Jackie has spent her life seeking out historic localities as a passionate photographer, reader, and learner, blending travel with and through historic literature. She now runs the online community, thehistorictraveler.com, where she provides featured articles, a digital magazine, travel guides, and other resources to help keep you entertained, inspired, and joyfully traveling the world. You're going to love my conversation with Jackie. She's also offering a free gift to our listeners, so if you enjoy traveling and exploring the world around you, stay tuned to the end for more details. Visit today's show notes for links to connect further with Jackie and the Historic Traveler community. All right, before we jump further into my conversation with Jackie, I want to encourage you to sign up for the show and to be my next guest here on the podcast. Every episode belongs to my guests, and you're welcome to talk about or promote anything that you would like. This show is just about meeting interesting people and sharing their stories and experiences, and I'd love to share your story too. If you'd like to hit record on your life, visit strangerconversationspodcast.com or realtayjones.com/podcast. Find a date and time on our calendar that works for you, and we'll connect. All episodes of the show are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as my website. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe to the Stranger Conversations podcast so you don't miss out on the conversations to come. Also, be sure to follow me on social media at realtayjones on most platforms. You're also going to find a video version of this conversation on YouTube, so make sure you stop by the Stranger Conversations podcast on YouTube to subscribe and follow along. Today's episode of the Stranger Conversations podcast is brought to you by my friends at Hammer Defense. Hammer Defense makes the world's first go-anywhere self-defense phone case, perfect for busy travelers at home or abroad. According to a Gallup Global Law and Order report, 60% of women feel unsafe walking alone at night. Thanks to Hammer Defense's discreet and easy-to-use design, you can explore the world with confidence, knowing that when danger strikes, you'll have the tools you need to strike back and feel protected. Hammer Defense is giving my listeners 10% off and free shipping on your next order by using promo code TAYAZ12 at checkout. That's TAYAZ12 at checkout. So before your next great adventure, visit hammerdefenseproducts.com, linked in the show notes, to grab your self-defense phone case today. Now, back to the show. All right, it's time to introduce you to Jackie Lapin. Enjoy, and I'll catch you next time. Okay, Jackie Lapin, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here, Tate. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, might not be too familiar with the podcast, but the Stranger Conversations podcast, really what we do is we just have conversations with people that, I don't know or know very little about, and just get to know that person and get a feeling for, what they are, or what they're about, who they are, a little bit of a life story, as well as kind of diving into what interests you and what you're doing these days, and, maybe even some lessons that you've learned along the way, kind of this journey called life. So really appreciate you joining me today. And Jackie, you are the Historic Traveler, which is very interesting to me. Not only you kind of blend a few different things with travel, but you also bring it back to literature and history, a lot of things that I'm interested in. So this is going to be a fantastic conversation, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I even see your David McCullough 1776 book up there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a great book. I've started to read a little bit more history. So it's that's one of the things when I was kind of seeing your website, before this conversation, just seems like a great idea that you've had to kind of blend your passions. And, a lot of people have these same passions, but they haven't really put it together the way that you may, have, and the way that you have, have it all laid out on your website to kind of help people with their travel through literature. So, one of the things that really, struck me is, you've been doing this for a long time. It says you're a 4-time author, award-winning photographer. You've been to 500 cities and kind of, putting those things down, those thoughts and kind of ideas for people to, travel on their own. And I don't know why, but I was fully expecting you to have an accent. I was thinking maybe you were English or something. I wasn't quite sure. But where are you? Where do you live?
I live just outside of Los Angeles on the way to Santa Barbara, over the hill from Malibu, in a place called Westlake Village.
Okay. Yeah. Beautiful place. Beautiful place. And is that where you were kind of born and raised, or did you just end up down in that area?
I'm a born and bred Southern Californian,
Okay.
but migrated out here. I've been in this neighborhood, which is called the Conejo Valley, for about almost 45 years.
Oh, wow.
And I love it. It's a beautiful place to live. But it's also a beautiful place to use as a nest to take off and explore the world from.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I could see that. You got it's a bustling area, lots of travel opportunities coming in and out of the Los Angeles area for sure. And what you kind of grew up in that area. You've been there for 45 years. I mean, what do you do? Is this something like traveling and the business photography? Is that something you've done for a very long time, or is this something that you just started to put into like entrepreneurship later in life?
so let me give you the history. It goes back a little bit. I actually decided to be a sports writer at the age of 11. And at the
Okay.
age of, and so I was at the Detroit Free Press at 20. I was at the Associated Press and the front pages of the Los Angeles Times at 21. I was at the Washington Post and the co-hosting Dodger Dugout here in Los Angeles on Channel 11
Okay.
at 22 years old.
Wow.
I went from there to have one of the 2 largest sports special events, cable television, public relations agencies in the country. You would have known my client list, including Toyota Motorsports and Showtime and Top Rank and Ice Capades and Harlem Globetrotters. I can go on and on and on. I did that for about 20 years. I was called to write 2 books that were spiritual in nature, personal growth. One
Okay.
was the best spiritual book of the year at the International New Age Trade Show. Did that and then realized that I really wanted to serve the people in the world who are making the world a better place. So for the last 15, 16 years, I've been doing podcast radio tours for authors, leaders, and experts in the personal growth, spirituality, health, and wellness space. So, and I worked with a lot of the people you might know, if you know that, Don Miguel Ruiz, Ariel Ford, James Twyman, Joe Vitale, Chris and Jen Atwood, and I can go on and on with lots of leaders in that space. So somewhere along there, when I was very young, I fell in love with history. And not only did I explore history locally here in Southern California, I'd go off and look at the missions and and the adobes and things like that. I minored in California history, but I also started reading historic novels and history books about the rest of the world so that I could really get a grasp of what it was. But I love doing it with historic novels because it makes it fun.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's about real people, real places. So it gave me a dose of good history because they're researching everything themselves. So they're giving us the benefit of the knowledge they've discovered. And so I had all of that in this vast library of historic novels. But every time during my business career, I would take a vacation or I would go on a business trip, I would tie it to travel. And when I go to those places, I take extra days and my cameras and explore. And so for me, that was the real joy. I mean, I couldn't get enough of it. So I like you say, I've been to 500 places, 50 countries, just
Wow.
as a closet photographer. Nobody knew I was taking all these pictures, but I, just loved it. And so I was filling up what ended up being 85 carousels worth of slides and then notebooks, 15 notebooks. And then something really profound happened. I hit my 70th birthday. And I realized that there were less days ahead than they were behind.
Yeah.
And
It sneaks up on you, doesn't it?
It does. And so I finally figured, okay, there are a whole bunch of bucket list cities I've not been to, and I don't know how much longer I'm going to carry a 50-pound suitcase and 3 cameras on my back.
Yeah.
And so I planned a 9-week trip to Europe, which was life-changing and absolutely amazing. And when I got back, I said, I want to do something. Really want to do something with all of this that has been accumulating, and my knowledge of historic locations, it all came together. And so out of that, I created the Historic Traveler, which is what's unique about this is it's not just a travel destination online. It is a place where we take and give you a little taste of a location. I'll tell you the history. I'll tell you what to see that's historically significant. And then I will take my photographs from that place. And then on top of that, we will give you the books to read to make you feel as if you live there. So you're going to get novels, you're going to get historic mysteries, you're going to get history books, and you're going to get biographies so that you can really experience it in a way that's well beyond just looking at this article or reading my magazine. So the magazine of Historic Traveler is 80 pages long. And the first half of the magazine is destinations. And the second half of the magazine are media, books and TV and movies about all this kinds of content. So what's really cool about it, each one has a Q&A every month, quarterly when we do this. And the first one has an expert. And so it might be somebody who saved the lighthouses in the world, or the dude ranches, or somebody that's an expert in graveyards and ossuaries. But the other one is dedicated to a historic novel writer. And so I'm really excited to say that our issue number 2 had Tony Riches, who's one of the top Elizabethan and Tudor writers in the world today. And then my next issue is going to have Fiona Davis, whose books are an international sensation. She writes dual timeline novels about strong women, who are oppressed by whatever the time is. Mm-hmm. But it's all set in historic buildings in New York City that we all know. Okay. So the New York Public Library, the Barbizon Hotel, the Dakota, all these fabulous New York buildings. And so what's more perfect for Historic Traveler than that? So in addition to the magazine and the articles, we created a membership program. And by the way, this membership program is totally free. Okay. But we've got all kinds of other assets and resources. So we wanted to be more than just an information source. Mm-hmm. We wanted to be a place to hang out, a place to, meet the people you want, a place to discover books. And I could tell you more about that, but basically that's what the Historic Traveler is. It is a community for people who love history, travel, and historic novels.
Yeah, interesting. So as part of that community, is there some sort of forum that, the members can get together and discuss different books and that type of thing?
Exactly. So we have a once a month book club. And then we also have what we call our conclave, taken from the Vatican, where we get together once a month. And like you say, we can discuss anything. And I might have a guest, a speaker. And we can talk about tips and places we've been and travel guides we've really loved. All of that is but we also have things like you have a no cost travel concierge who will help you plan your trips.
Oh, wow.
So, it's hard to find a travel agent today. Yeah. So if you're a member, you get access to that. You also have our directories. Like we have the world's largest and first directory dedicated to historic novels, mysteries, and history books by location. So you can, wherever you're planning to travel, or if you happen to have a particular affinity to France, or Scotland, you'll be able to go and you'll find the books from that. Then we have a directory of historic TV dramas, and where you can find them going all the way back to roots and most recent ones that are on TV right now. Okay. Then we've got a directory of, we've got you a list of the top 200 historic films for the last several decades by era. So if you particularly like Rome, you can go and look. Then the next thing we have is a directory of historic hotels. And then we're building a directory of historic museums all over the world. And And on top of all of that, I have an incredible photo gallery. All
Wow.
those photos, I actually digitized 35,000 images, 35,000,
Wow.
and I turned it into 60 plus individual collections on the photo gallery. And I have to say, I think they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And they're going to, I think they're going to evoke an emotion of you, and it's not just the locations on there. I have landscapes, I have animals, I have roses, I have hot air balloons, it's all kinds of really cool stuff that
Yeah.
you can just peruse. If you want to get them, you can. It's really cool.
Yeah. I think everybody kind of takes a little bit, something different out of travel, right? Some people, they're into the food. Some people, like you said, the landscapes or just the history or the architecture. Is there something specific that traveling, does for you? Is there something that you're really drawn to when you travel? That
Well,
when you go to a new place, you have to go see, X because of this type of thing.
yes, to some extent, that is the case. But let me just say that my very first travel was an amazing experience because I had never traveled alone. And I started out traveling with some relations,
Hmm.
and I was invited on a trip, but I discovered that they were ugly Americans, not the kind
Okay.
of people that I would be proud to be with. And so I said, I'm going to go on my own. It's the first time I ever did anything that spontaneously.
Yeah.
And it was really fun because I'm on a little bus in Corfu, and this lady is standing there with me, and we're sharing conversation, and she lives in Athens, and she said, well, where are you going to be staying when you go to Athens? And I said, I don't know yet. She said, fine, call me when you get into town and you can stay with me.
Wow.
And that is the way I started this trip. It was totally spontaneous, and it was incredibly amazing. And what that did is it gave me the courage and the self-confidence to do almost everything else I did in life afterward. So I believe that travel really builds you there, but it also enriches you, helps you understand the world, gives you a connection to the people who live there, especially if you have read and you understand what really made this place.
Hmm.
Then people are so thrilled to tell you about their place, and you can do it from an educated framework. And they love that because you're interested in them.
Yeah.
So for me, I love stepping back into the past. That's my always priority. But I also love meeting people, seeing their lives, experiencing what that culture has become
Yeah.
based on this history. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the start of that 9-week trip? Is that what the
oh, that
trip
was
was?
my very first trip when I was in 26, 27 years
Okay.
old.
All right. Yeah. So really just stepping out of your, your comfort zone, getting out of your box and just immersing yourself with, what those countries have to offer and the people. And, I think that's great. There's different ways to travel. I mean, one of the things that I like to do is travel on my motorcycle. And it's a completely different type of travel because you're not locked in a box with the windows up. You go through, you can experience the smells. Everything is different. You can smell the landscape, you can smell the food that they're cooking. So it is, even though if it's just traveling around America, you do feel like you're immersed more in what's going on around you. So yeah, I can imagine, going to a place like Greece and all these exotic places like that, and just, staying with random strangers and getting to know, their culture and experience their hospitality firsthand. That's got to be a great experience for sure.
Yes, and I always try to stay in a historic hotel.
Yeah.
So, give me an example. There was a place in Verona that was two 13th century palazzos they'd taken in the courtyard in the middle and turned it into the entryway to the hotel. Then, when you went up one stair to where the breakfast room was, they had a literally window in the floor, and you could look into a Roman home.
Wow.
I mean, is
Interesting.
that not cool?
That is cool.
So, I'm always looking for places that give you a sense of what was there.
Yeah. And, when you're talking, historic novels, you're talking fiction, right? Do you find that a lot of the fiction is pretty historically accurate when it comes to the novels? I mean, I guess they research it and they put it together, but when you're writing about a distant past, say, and it wasn't written in the time, a book about the olden days written today, Do they put a lot of work into getting those the history accurate, you find?
My God, yes. I
Really?
was just the Historic Novel Society of North America, meeting some of the leading historic novelists in the world, and some that were just beginning.
Yeah.
An interesting thing that many of them begin by telling their family stories.
Okay.
So they are really interested in accuracy, but most historic novelists are. And there's a whole subgenre about real human beings that actually existed and just fictionalizing their lives.
Okay.
So a lot of time there's a tremendous amount of documentation about those, and they're working from their letters, and they're working from documentation that they know about their lives. And so basically you're piggybacking off the research that they have already done. Yes, indeed, most of them are highly accurate about the information in their books.
Okay. Yeah,
And
interesting.
many of them go to the places. That's what's really interesting. They go to the locations to see. I mean, Tony Richards was telling me that he was standing in the room where one of his heroines lived or was imprisoned, and he could see out the window and see exactly what she saw because the woods hadn't changed.
Yeah.
And so he could describe to a T what she was experiencing. And one of the fun things about the historic traveler is I'm no longer writing all the articles. A lot of these historic novelists are giving me articles about the places they researched for their books.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, like Hemingway. I like Hemingway, and you get the sensation just reading his books that he's not just making it up, right? Like he was probably sitting in the square at the cafe and he experienced that. But but I don't know. It could just be really good. So that's pretty interesting because I would think, and kind of what you're explaining is more like movies, based on a true story. But they're also they're in that historic era, but they're kind of taking some liberties, but they've done a lot of homework with it. And you mentioned movies, TV shows, and that type of thing. I mean, do you think either one? Do you find maybe books are more accurate, or the movies that you watch and that maybe are a little bit more sensationalized? I don't know, because you can see the book, the show, or the movie, and maybe you go there and you see the same thing, but maybe what you picture in your mind reading, I don't know. What do you think is more accurate?
I think it depends on the particular item, a piece of art, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I think television and movies take a good amount of liberty in some cases when they're doing it. But you can also see a lot of times where they're talking about the detail that they had to do in clothing and costuming and recreating the set from where that happened. So they're very interested in creating as much reality as possible based on the historical context. But some people, in order to make a good story, you have to do a little tweaking.
Yeah.
Sometimes the timeline is not exactly the same.
Right. Yeah, and one thing, I have traveled a lot around North America, but I haven't been to Europe. And it's interesting here because a lot of my family is over from Virginia. So when we were kids, we were over there, and we got to see a lot of American history and things that people don't see. Monticello, and just all the Civil War stuff, and it's very fascinating. But at the same time, I kind of always say people in Europe, a lot of time they're living in a house that's older than America is. So the span of history over there is just kind of ridiculous to even wrap your mind around, and some of the architecture and everything, to think that they could build these things so long ago when everything here is so new in comparison.
Yeah, I think absolutely. We sometimes discount our own history because of the fact that we're a younger country. But, lots of our history is still right around us.
Yeah.
Such as the California missions, or the, Faneuil Hall and the places in Boston that on the Freedom Trail. Or, St. Augustine in Florida is the oldest fort in America, and it dates to the Spanish era. So, it's to be found. You just have to look a little bit. I loved going to Chicago and seeing, the buildings that sprung up after the fire of Chicago. And then there's that wonderful water tower that actually lived through the fire. So anywhere you look, there's great history.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. There was always stuff in Virginia with the Civil War bullets and, out in the pasture and just arrowheads and Native American history and that type of thing. It's fascinating to me.
From a city standpoint, you got Alexandria, which is great, and it has cobblestone streets, parts of it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, 500 cities, that's a lot. And obviously it's probably a little more than that. But is there one place that you would say in all your travels that you think, oh, that is my place, that that you found to be your favorite, or maybe it's a region perhaps, or country? Is there anywhere that kind of fell in love with more than the others?
Well, I think one of my favorite little places is Bruges, Belgium. It's like a little mini Amsterdam,
Okay.
with swans in the canals and the long, tall buildings, the mercantile buildings and that you'll see in Amsterdam. But I love Italy. I mean, Italy is just amazing. I was just thinking about a little town that is so incredible. It's Siena, and
Hmm.
it's not very big, but it dates from the Middle Ages. And I mean, everything dates from the Middle Ages. And they do a horse race every year
Yeah, the
that dates
paleo,
also.
right?
That's right,
I've
exactly, the paleo.
I've
That
seen some
dates
of
from the
that.
Middle Ages. And when you walk around town, it's the city divides itself into these little districts, and they each put up a rider. And so when you walk around town, there are these banners all over town attributing the region right there. This is the goose ones, and this is this one, and this is this one. And then the writers wear the colors on those banners. And it's just so fun that you get to experience what something that's been going on all of those years in a town that has changed very little. I mean, yeah, you might have a phone store and a grocery store, but they're inside of a building that dates from the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen videos of that race, and it looks brutal. I mean, they're coming around corners and sliding and slamming into walls, and when somebody wins, it's pride. Everybody's so excited for their rider. So you're saying each rider kind of represents a different portion of this, like area of the city, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Not every district races in every race. It's kind of like,
Okay.
a, a lottery kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the people hang out of the buildings, often scream and yell and get very drunk.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like one of those things that would be a good time, especially maybe if you were having some drinks. If some of these places like Bruges or Italy is was it just something that you stumbled upon and found, or was there like a novel that brought you to those places that really connected you with them, or is it just because you loved the cities?
I wanted to see them because I knew, much about this, and in not one particular novel. If you read a body of novels about, Florence and the Renaissance period, it all kind of adds in. That certain things happen in Milan, certain things happen in Siena, certain things happen in Florence, but they all mix, and all
Yeah.
the people go between them. Da Vinci and and Michelangelo and all of that. And so you wanted to see all the different places where these things took place.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was part of the impetus. But, there's always discovery everywhere you go. And there were towns that I didn't think to go, but ended up on a tour. For example, when I went to Florence, which is one of my all-time favorite cities, they took us on a day trip. We booked a day trip to San Germaniano. And San Germaniano is this wonderful little hilltop town. And in the Middle Ages, all of the families had these giant towers on their homes because they were all warring with each other.
Yeah.
And so this was their lookout towers to, ward off attacks from the other families in town.
Okay.
Well, most of those are gone around Italy. But in San Germaniano, they still exist. And you can see towers all over town. And I went to a city called Lucca, which is between Pisa and Florence. And in Lucca, there's one of these towers that remains, and the family planted an oak tree on the top of it. And to this day, you can see this giant oak tree on the top. Now, who is not going to love stories like that?
Yeah, I think I've seen a picture of that, or seen it in a travel show, I believe. Yeah, it's a tree growing on top of this building tower. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, and I mean, and you're going a lot of places, and you're really immersing yourself in here, and you're like we were talking earlier, in your earlier 20s, stepping outside of your box, and staying with different families. Have you made some lifelong friends on some of these journeys that you still talk to?
That very trip, I met a woman who was English, who lived in Manchester. And she is one of my darling friends. Yeah. And I miss not seeing her. And so, but every time I would go to England, I would go and stay and visit with Dorothy. One time I was on a cruise, on a little dinner cruise in Singapore Harbor. Okay. And I got to talking with this woman, and she said to me, I live in New Zealand. If you're ever planning to come to New Zealand, you should come and stay with me. Well, we started a correspondence for many years. And finally, I had an opportunity, and I said, I am coming. And so she lived on a little bay that looked out on a volcano in the bay that was puffing. It's called White Island. And we would sit there, and when the weather would clear, we'd see White Island in the puffing volcano. But yes, and she was a friend until she passed. So yes, I do make friends. And here's a tip for people: don't just talk to the people on a trip. Mm-hmm. Get to talking to other tourists. Get to talking to the locals. Get to talking to the restaurateurs. Talk to your taxi drivers, your bus drivers. You are going to learn so much more. And most importantly, when you're on a tour, do not hang at the back. Go straight up there and stand with the tour guide and ask more questions. Yeah. You're going to learn a lot more, because what they tell the group is only a small portion of what they know.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, I think, and I'm a big proponent of that just in life in general. I mean, this whole reason I'm even doing a podcast like this, right? I'm a very curious person. So, if I go somewhere like a party with people, I'll be the one talking with some random stranger in the corner, just getting to know other people, because it's very easy to stay locked in with those that and, comfortable. And then you leave a party of 100 people and you never met anybody new. I think that's a shame. So especially when you're traveling too, and you can meet some great people. One of the things, I did write this down and I wanted to ask you, it's just because I've never heard that word before, but you said graveyards and ossuaries?
Ossuaries that's where it's a burial area where all the skulls are piled up together. Oh. Like the Paris, the Paris Underground has you've seen pictures of the skulls side by side. That's what an ossuary is.
Interesting. And is that a common thing across Europe? I mean, do a lot of different countries have ossuaries?
Yes, and it's not just skulls; it's all the bones. They take the bones of people who've died, and then they basically take the flesh off them and put them in some kind of depository for the rest of their eternal existence. Yeah. And yes, there are quite a number of them around. You'll find them around the world.
Yeah,
different burial customs. A lot of times it's also associated with monasteries and monks and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not something weird or evil. It's actually in reverence. It is like a burial custom of, interesting.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
But they freak us out when we go and we see them,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen pictures and things like that. Yeah. It does look like, whoa, there was something crazy going on in here, but yeah, it appears sinister, but it is not.
A lot of things are like that, actually. We put interpretations on them that are not what the people do.
Yeah, kind of put your own customs and culture, inside of somebody else's, and it doesn't fit, you know. Um, just as far as hobbies, obviously traveling is a big hobby of yours, and photography and things. Do you have any other hobbies outside of that? Is there something that you like to do when you're not traveling?
Most of the time, you can find me in my backyard with a historic novel.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
really what I love to do, to curl up in my backyard, which my beautiful home, I've been here for many, many years, and I'm finally getting ready to move on. But it has waterfalls in the backyard. So I
Oh,
sit there and I listen to the beautiful waterfalls and I read my historic novels. That to me is total heaven.
yeah. That that's kind of that's. It sounds very nice. It sounds very peaceful, and it's funny because I never used to read when I was younger. I used to hate reading. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't even read one page without, oh, this is crazy. When they make you read in school, but in my older years, I've become, quite a reader, and I've read, I read basically every single day, every night. And I've started to read more classic novels and, kind of putting myself there, but it's kind of funny, when I always kind of think like, well, you're reading the book and you put yourself into that time, but I've never really thought about, oh, let me put myself into, travel to where these books are and kind of experience that on a different level. So I think that's a very interesting way to think of it. I've never thought about that myself. So yeah, I think that's something great that you're doing. I mean, and when you travel, is there something that you love to do, or something that you do every place you go, every new place you go? Is there something that you do or seek out when you go to a new place?
Well, one of the things that I usually do is I take a city bus tour the first day
Oh,
so I can see everything
yeah,
and I have an idea of where it is.
right.
And then the next day I get on foot and I go to see the places that I want. But I'm always a sucker for, historic hotels, or for places that are that resonate down in history, palaces, castles, but also the homes of the people. How did they live? If I have
Yeah.
a chance to go tour somebody's home, I will do that as well. And that's a lot of that's something that a lot of other people will pass up.
Hmm.
But I want to see, what was it like when they lived there? What were the challenges they lived with?
Yeah.
Um, that gives you a real sense of how the struggle that these people had, or the luxury that they had in their time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, sometimes I'm always astonished at the technologies ahead of their day that people come up with,
Yeah.
to live comfortably.
Yeah. And when you say kind of see people's homes, you mean like historical homes where people used to live, or the homes where they live today, or both, maybe?
Well, both, but I mean, mostly historic homes.
Okay.
He'll give you an opportunity to walk in somebody's, um, you know, uh, 19th century home, or something like that. In Europe, they're much easier. One of my favorite places is Chenonceau. It's one of the chateaus in the Loire Valley. And what's really fascinating for me, for example, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The story about this chateau is that Catherine de' Medici, who was Queen of France, and one of the Medici family members, was married to the French king at the time, Henry, and he had a mistress for much of his life named Diane de Poitiers. He gave her this incredible chateau that is arches over the river, and it's stunningly beautiful.
Hmm.
And so she lived happily there until he died, when Catherine threw her out unceremoniously, like almost the day he was gone. And then she took over that chateau, and I was standing in her bedroom.
Yeah.
I'm looking around and seeing, this is where Catherine lived. This was what she saw. All the tiles are the same. All the chimney was the same. The bed was a recreation, but everything there was what she saw when she got up in the morning.
Yeah.
Now, when you've read that much about her, or seen, for example, the Showtime series, The Serpent Queen, about her,
Hmm.
and then it gives you a real sense of our
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah, and it's very inspiring. I think that's pretty neat, and I like hearing kind of from someone who's done a lot of traveling. These things that excite you, but also how you get yourself involved with the city. Kind of taking the bus trip. I mean that. I actually probably wouldn't have thought of that. Just traveling around. These people, they're driving every day, and they probably have a lot of knowledge of the place as well. Almost like the drivers of some sort of public transportation and getting the feel
Well,
for it.
these are bus tours that actually have a guide on them,
Oh,
and
okay.
so you see exactly where they are. But usually it's like a double decker or something. You can sit
Yeah.
on the top, and then another option is a hop on, hop off bus, and
Okay.
I love those because it's a circuit, and you can get on and off at any one time and explore. So when I was in Budapest, for example, I started at the waterfront. And then I went to the more modern sections, and the beautiful parks that they have there, and wandered around. And then I got back on it, and I went to down to the Parliament building, and I had a wonderful opportunity to shoot the Parliament building from all different angles. And you've seen that stunning building on like all the Viking commercials. It's that
Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
long.
Mm-hmm.
And so I shot it in different lights, night, all kinds of stuff. But the hop on, hop off, I stopped at, you could stop in the Jewish Quarter, you can stop, where they have the baths. Budapest is famous for its mineral baths,
Hmm.
and they have all these fabulous mineral baths that date from the early 19th century. And so there's just so much to see, and a hop on, hop off. With one ticket, you can see all of it, or split it up over a couple of days.
Yeah. So you can just jump back on when it comes around and just try to see what else interests you and pop off. That's pretty interesting. I did not know
And
that
they
those have.
usually give you a little guide, map. So
Yeah.
you could say, okay, if I stop here, this is what I'm going to see.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Wow. Fantastic. Yeah, well, you definitely know your stuff, and it sounds like you've really curated a good community of a lot of like-minded people. And you know, besides just the historictraveler.com, right? Thehistorictraveler.com. Where else can people follow you and some of the things that you're doing, or is that website really just the hub?
Yeah, you can find us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and Pinterest.
Okay, great.
Enough?
Yeah. So any of your favorite social media, you're there, and you can dive in a little bit more and learn more about the Historic Traveler, and get a few more tips and some additional reading recommendations. And yeah, it really inspired me. I mean, it sounds like you've really you've led a great life, and you're really you're still at it, and really traveling around and trying to put yourself into these positions of perpetual learning and experiencing, which is great. And I understand that you have a free gift for
Yeah.
folks as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I put together a guide for international and one for North America. The international is 20 international cities where you can immerse yourself in history, and the books that'll make you feel as if you lived it. So you can grab that by going to thehistorictraveler.com/guide. And the other one is, and this is 18 in North America, thehistorictraveler.com/guide NA, as in North America. And so either of those grab. And one of these days, I'm also going to try to start leading trips and taking people with, on to places. So my next trip is going to be Egypt. So
Wow.
I haven't been there yet. And we have a newsletter. So you can either join the membership for free, which you should, to take advantage of it. Or you could just sign up for the newsletter. And every other week, I send you a newsletter that has all kinds of stuff that's going on. with us. But more importantly, I'm going to give you and the posts that you might have missed if you haven't been on the website recently. But more importantly, I'm also going to give you news about all these cool things that are happening historically around the world. Archaeological digs you might even be able to participate in. Opportunities to join something, but news that's developing in the world about that pertains to history. Right. I'll also give you, news about if I'm going to be leading trips and other kinds of things. If we have, for example, one of our experts or authors that are going to be doing a session with us, all of that. So if you get on the email list, then we'll keep you informed by this fun newsletter that gives you lots of cool stuff to keep you going.
Great. Yeah, and I'll make sure I link to all that into the show notes for this episode so that people can find it very easily. I think that would be great. What you're saying, do your own guiding. You definitely have the personality for it and the experience, to really make that a success, I believe. So Egypt, though, I do want to ask you about that. So you said you've never been there.
Oh, I've always had an affinity for Europe, and I have done some travel in Asia. But Egypt has always been kind of hanging out there, okay. And it's time. I'm definitely going sometime next year.
Yeah, I think that would be an amazing trip. I mean, everybody, you see the pyramids and all of that, but I can't imagine that any of it does it justice than seeing it in person on just how big it is. One of the books I just read was, are you familiar with Graham Hancock? He does a lot of historical stuff. He's kind of I don't even know what you would call it, but like a self-taught, not even an archaeologist, but he does a lot of those things. And he has a book called Footprints of the Gods, and it's his lessons and really just him educating about just ancient societies. He even has a Netflix show. The book is about this big, but it's very interesting, and he does a lot on ancient Egypt and the pyramids, and it's just and maybe what could they be. So he has a lot of fantastical theories about what it could be, and it's fun. It's an interesting read, but I got more of a sense of Egypt and the vastness of the pyramids and just how much more there is to know about them that we don't know. And yeah, ever since I read that a few months back, I thought, wow, that seems like it would be a great place to really immerse yourself in and see what that's all about. And even just not even the pyramids, I can just imagine going into one of an Egyptian town or a market, and just seeing everything that's happening. Kind of has its own feel to it. A little very Indiana Jones, I think.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But I think also today, and I want to make this point too. You can go and travel alone or with your family, which is fantastic. But you can also, if you have any hesitancy about traveling, take a tour. Yeah. If you're worried about the safety of an area and you still want to see it, take a tour. Like if I'm going to go to Egypt, I'm going on a tour. I do not want to be wandering in those Sikhs by myself.
Yeah.
Because you can just get lost and all kinds of problems can happen. So if you're with a group, you have a certain amount of guidance and protection that will make sure that you are well served by that. And what I love about traveling with a tour is they handle the suitcases.
Oh, well, there you go. It's hard to beat that, Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, Jackie, it's great talking with you. Again, very inspired, and I'm really looking forward to diving more into your website, and hopefully some additional people can find you and what you're doing. And I wish you all the best in all of your future endeavors.
Well, thank you, Tay. I am so delighted. Thank you for your interest and your passion for this too. And, I love it when I find a kindred spirit who also really have an affinity for history. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate everything that you're doing, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Jackie Lapin. I hope it's inspired you maybe to get off the couch, get out of your comfort zone, and to experience the world firsthand. To help you in those upcoming journeys, don't forget to visit thehistorictraveler.com, linked here in the show notes, and join that community. Also, don't forget to follow the links to get your hands on the free gift that Jackie is offering our listeners. I want to thank Jackie for coming on the show and for sharing her passions with us. Make sure you follow along with The Historic Traveler and everything else that Jackie has going on. If you'd like to connect further with the Stranger Conversations podcast and be my next guest here on the show, visit strangerconversationspodcast.com. Pick a date and time on our calendar and we'll connect. If maybe being my next guest isn't for you, but you happen to know somebody that would be a great guest, please share the show with them. I would love to meet them. Thank you for listening to the show and supporting my guests and sponsors. I'm Tay Jones, and we'll chat later.